So, Lorde is a singer from New Zealand. She is quite young. She's only. Oh my god, I can hear your dog big time.
Alright, sorry.
We were going to do.
Fuck off, Max. Max!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Jamz with Joe, Shak, and Sam. Except there's no Joe today, just the Shak and Sam here to review Lorde's new album, Melodrama. So, let's jam. Lorde is a singer from New Zealand, very young. She's only 20, and this is her second album. She released her first one back in 2013 when she was, I don't know, like 5 or something. And now she's released this. I think it's important to talk about Lorde's age because lyrically, same with Pure Heroine and with this as well, like it's so obvious that she's young or that like a young person is writing and creating this music, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the first thing I want to talk about in terms of a positive would be Sober. So when we first listened to Sober, we were going to do a track review of Sober. We kind of recorded it, but we've kind of scrapped that now. But we listened to it, so I've already kind of analysed this song. But since then, after hearing it in the context of the album and hearing it again and again, so I've heard it quite a few times now, I feel like there is some appeal to it that I didn't get originally. Like, I think the vocal snippets at first, I felt like they were very not fleshed out. First, I kind of felt like they were so in the script, they were kind of basically nothing. And also, I felt the horns were a bit cliche as well and too clean in a sense. But I actually grown to like the horns, maybe just because they're such a kind of bursting change in the musical composition of the song. And in the context of the album, I think the vocal snippet things are one of the more interesting ways that she's made the song. You know, it's one of the more interesting elements, I think.
I totally agree. In terms of where this song comes in on the album, and I too feel that it's better in the context of the album than it was a single, despite the fact that I did enjoy it as a single release. It, I think, kickstarts the album better than Greenlight does, and is more interesting as a song than Greenlight.
Yeah.
Both instrumentally, lyrically, just basically in every way it could be. I also really enjoy the kind of repeated vocal line that acts as some kind of colour to the instrumentation. You know, it's a common theme throughout this album, and to a certain extent Pure Heroine, Lorde kind of building up the melodrama, for lack of a better word, of a party and the whole kind of party lifestyle, but also kind of giving a bit of a darker edge to it maybe. So The Weeknd, for example, on House of Balloons, you know, kind of talks about going through a party and the darker side of it, but that gets like pretty dark. I feel like Lorde strikes a good balance between making a song that talks about this enjoyable in the sense of a pop song, but also bringing in those darker elements. I feel like it's a good mix of the two here. Like, one doesn't overshadow the other and they blend together quite nicely, and that's something that goes across most of the album, in my opinion.
There are times where I don't think the lyrics work quite so well, but I'll talk about that later when we get to the other side of the review, because that's going to be that's a long thing.
Okay.
Yeah, man, it's a decent song. I'm not sure I would call it a highlight. I will save that term for some of the later songs, because I think there are songs that shine more than this.
All right.
But it's definitely not a low light, which when I first was going into the album, I kind of just assumed like this will probably end up as a low light because I didn't really like it.
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's a highlight of the album. Perhaps not one of the stronger highlights, but we'll talk about that later. The next track that immediately struck me as a highlight was The Love.
Okay, yeah. No, same. I have that as a highlight for sure as well.
The main thing that really draws me to this is how playful Lorde is in her vocal delivery of some pretty catchy and pretty good lyrics, really. Broadcast the boom, 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 boom and make them all dance to it is a great line in describing what she's doing on this album. The only problem that I have with this track in terms of that line, and it's a small problem, is that it is a little bit overused, and I wish that it was kind of kept as that kind of last bit on the pre-chorus. And I feel like
Right,
the pre-chorus of this song is the strongest part of this song. The melodies are really engaging, and I get some really good vibes from it as well.
See, my favourite part of the song is definitely the chorus itself.
Okay.
Because I really like how it gets really eerie, and there's like lots of cloudy backing vocals with these kind of ripping, murky instrumentals, and it's just like, it's very atmospheric, and there's kind of a rich thickness to the way it's all mixed together. So the chorus is definitely my highlight, although I do really like the bridge, the pre-chorus as well. I think the bridge shows her capabilities as a singer quite well. And I wanted more of that on the album in general. More of her.
I can totally agree with you, but we'll cover that a bit with the lowlights, I guess. More
for sure. So, the Louvre is definitely a highlight for me as well. This chorus is probably my favourite part of the album in general. I also really like that kind of clangy guitar that takes you out.
Yeah, the outro.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a 90s like love rock ballad, you know, that kind of guitar tone.
Yeah, I understand.
Like Wicked Game or song like that. Has that same similar kind of guitar tone, I think. My highlight after that would be Hard Feelings, Loveless.
All right, go on.
Oh, okay. I like so I feel like there's quite a lot of ideas going on this song.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the more experimental tracks I've personally heard Lorde craft.
Right, yeah. It definitely has a lot of, especially there's a moment in it where you get these really abrasive and kind of atonal kind of keys that come in. You know what I mean? They're almost like quite industrial sounding.
Is this the kind of broken instrumental that like there's an interlude in, I think, the Hard Feelings part? It's like it feels like it's broken, the instrument, whatever's been playing. Yeah.
It's quite off kilter, and it's almost offbeat as well. And this was another one of my favorite moments on the album, just because I like that kind of glitchy, unsettling sound, that kind of sound that she created. Other than that, I think she does some playful tricks with some strange keyboard tones as well in the back during Hard Feelings. And then when it gets to Loveless, I really like the verses in Loveless a lot. I think they're very catchy and they're very fun, and I really like these kind of breathy percussions that go on in it, and the way she delivers "Bet You Wanna Rip My Heart Out." There's just a kind of fun in the way she delivers it, and it's kind of done right here. I think she goes for a similar thing in other parts of the album, and I don't really like it as much. But here, I think the way she gets playful and the way she gets kind of a bit edgy is enjoyable. So yeah, I like both parts. I'm not sure which one I'd say I like the most. I think they both have their problems, though. I don't think either of them are like amazing. It's just that I think it's a highlight because I liked the difference. I liked that it changed things up, and just kind of contextually as a highlight.
Well, for me, I know which half I definitely prefer, and it's Loveless. Because I think in Hard Feelings, you were highlighting that particular part of the instrumental. And I personally didn't like it because this is a problem that shows up on other tracks as well. She'll introduce these instrumental elements, but they don't really
flesh out.
They don't really go anywhere. They don't develop the theme or vibe or whatever that she's creating on a song. They just seem to be put there, and then nothing is done with them. And I felt like this was the case with Hard Feelings. And another issue that I have with this track is that it's meant to be this kind of two-parter, two-sided thing. The tracks do not transition seamlessly.
Yeah, they don't really have anything to do with each other sonically. Like, it's a bit of a random smash together. They could have just been two different songs, really.
And I feel like that it would have been better served for that, because I really do like Loveless.
Okay.
I really like the kind of booming bass drum that introduces it. It's just got a real kick to it. And, you know, it makes a main part of the instrumental on this track, and was really into that. And like you, I like the kind of playful, kind of psycho-ish demeanour Lorde adopts, whilst, again, going to this kind of vibe that she does of kind of building up the darker elements of party lifestyle or young lifestyles, but also alluding to how just kind of a bit nasty it is. So this track, is Loveless in particular, took me a while to warm to, but I could do without Hard Feelings. Loveless is definitely good.
I think Loveless is one of the best lyrical moments as well.
Yeah.
Providing I'm charitable in my interpretation, I think she's trying to parody the idea of our generation being all fucked up and like we don't know how to. There was a little genius note which was kind of this idea of like she's parodying the idea of millennials not being able to like properly relate to each other and stuff. A loveless generation, to be, if I was, for me to like it, it would have to be a parody, because if like she was saying it seriously, then it would be a bit like cringy, obviously. But I think I'd give her the benefit of the doubt of saying like I think this is a good parody of that idea.
Fair enough. My super highlight on this album is Writer in the Dark. I feel like it's the best track on the album.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have some problems with Writer in the Dark. And my main problem with Writer in the Dark is it sounds like Kate Bush worship.
I did not have a problem with that personally.
I mean, I love Kate Bush. Like, Kate Bush is one of my favorite artists, but she doesn't have the quirk. She doesn't have the attitude. I don't think she has the really brilliant, deep understanding of how vocal melodies can kind of progress and depress. It just feels like it's Kate Bush insofar as the way she's kind of arranged the pianos and the fact that she's stretching her voice to these kind of to a similar tones and similar just heights that Kate Bush likes to go to. I got a lot of Kate Bush vibes, but kind of like, not like, I wouldn't say cheap knockoff, but kind of just like that sound in its mediocrity, I suppose. Okay. There was not much. I think maybe the fact that it hit me as so Kate Bush didn't help, because it's like, Kate Bush being one of my favorite artists, I think about what she made and then I start comparing it and it's like, well, I just feel like there's so much more to her music than the song like this. And it kept coming back to me. Like, it's not like I listened to it and I was like, maybe I was wrong. Like, every time I listened to it, I was like, this feels so Kate Bush. And I think that kind of harmed it for me personally in my relationship to the song.
It's interesting that you brought up Lorde's age, and I agree it's important to bring that up, because if we are going to talk about Kate Bush with this track in particular, The Kick Inside, Kate Bush's first album.
Yep, first album.
She released that when she was 20. So Lorde and Kate Bush are comparable in age for these albums in particular. And I understand what you mean. I personally think The Kick Inside is a superior album, and Kate Bush's discography as a whole, from what I've heard, is superior to pretty much everything Lorde has released. But I feel within the context of this album, this is like the big kind of emotional crescendo of this melodrama, because ultimately what is being talked about here is melodrama. Like, the name of the album was a perfect choice. But I wish, like, she goes for this really emotional crescendo, and I certainly felt it, but it wasn't like earth-shattering, nor is the song earth-shattering in terms of songwriting. It's still really good, in my opinion, and I just wish that as much as I'm kind of downplaying how effective this emotive build-up is, I wish that there was more moments that I felt like there was a kind of emotional build-up or some form of nuanced emotion.
I see what you mean, yeah. It's definitely not a low light. Like, it'd be like around sober level, like just outside of my highlights. So it's not that I didn't like it, it's just that it wasn't a highlight, and it did kind of, that thing did bug me. I understand what you mean with the emotional element of it. I definitely get what you mean there.
Yeah,
it definitely had some of the biggest punches. But I'm gonna have to take us back, because my super clear highlight is Sober 2.
Wow, okay.
Melodrama. And that is another, and it's for similar reasons that I felt this was the most emotional song. For multiple reasons. One is the way she breaks into the kind of breathy falsetto, which I think is a really nice contrast to her natural voice. But the main thing that it hit me emotionally way more, and this might be to do with the fact that as a music listener, a lot of the time I feel myself more tuned into the sounds than the words, is the kind of pained tone of the piano. And the piano is a lot less clean and less cheesy than in some other places. It feels a lot more sorrowful and desolate, and and there's these sparse notes that come in too. There's some really nice strings as well, like violins that come in, which are cool. And then it bursts into this kind of like trap thing.
Yeah.
And I really like it. Like, I really like the sound of it, right? Like, I think it sounds really good. And I really like the way the song goes out as well. Although, even though I really like the sound of it, again, like you were saying about the trap before, it feels kind of random. And it was like, well, why did this only happen for 30 seconds of the whole album? Like, it's kind of, as much as I enjoyed it, it was like, this seems like a weird half-baked idea that you've done here. You know, it is definitely my highlight, and I really like the song, but it was a strange choice, I'd say.
Yeah, you've kind of perfectly encapsulated how I felt about that trap part. You know, it was interesting to have it there, but I was left wondering why.
Yeah.
But Sober 2 just fell short of a highlight for me for that reason. The thing that stuck with me the most about this track is the line, "Oh, how fast the evening passes, cleaning up the champagne glasses." And I feel like throughout a lot of this album, Lorde continues to prove that she's skilled in writing memorable imagery that's also kind of catchy in terms of the content that she continues to write about. But the trap thing was like the major reason this didn't edge a highlight for me. I'd like to give a shout out to Perfect Places.
Okay.
This was the first single leading up to the album that gave me hope that this wouldn't be like kind of generic or just a kind of carbon copy of Pure Heroin, because the other lead up tracks to this album, Greenlight and Liability, definitely didn't give me much hope for the album.
Yeah, they're two of my definitely more iffy tracks for sure.
And I like Perfect Places more in the context of the album as well, as it's like a really nice album closer in terms of what this album's been discussing. And I like instrumentally the sound that follows from the lyric "Perfect Places." That kind of, it's like keyboards or bass. I couldn't quite tell, but I like how this album finishes on what feels like a big positive, again melodramatic ending. Just kind of saying, you know, what the fuck are perfect places anyway? Like trying to escape into this drug-fueled, alcohol-fueled, whatever atmosphere to kind of escape the melodrama of life. Like she talks about losing heroes, probably referring to David Bowie, I would imagine, considering that they had a fairly close artistic relationship toward the end of his life, I believe.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, but yeah, I like Perfect Places.
Okay, well, yeah, I thought it was decent. Again, it wouldn't be a low light of mine. I thought maybe the way the chorus was so anthemic was a bit it was a bit climactic in a typical cheesy way. But it did have some of my favorite lyrics, like "I'll blow my brains out on the radio to the radio." I like that line. And it does have some really nice. She does some really nice like howls in the bridge. But yeah, it wouldn't be a highlight for me. But I can see that.
Let's get into the problems of this album.
Okay, well, so it's funny that it seemed like one of your high points of the album was the lyrics, because I have a major problem with the lyrics of this album.
All right.
And it's you know, and I'm sorry I don't want to call out Lorde. I don't want to be harsh, but when I was reading these Genius annotations, it sounds like she thinks she's like mad clever, and she's like telling me that like shit is complex, and I'm like, there's nothing that complex about these, like about what I'm hearing anyway. And it's like I feel like it almost feels like there's a naivety in the way in her lyrics that is like that she's not aware of in a sense, and it leads to a lot of, I think, for starters, the lyrical content is monotone in the sense that it's about the same shit. And it's been about the same shit since Pure Heroin. So this is two albums of the same subject. I mean, fair enough, you could say the same about The Weeknd, and I like The Weeknd, but you know, it's a fine line, right? Because you know, I only really like one Weeknd project, you know, and you know that was kind of like a lightning in a bottle for him, because I haven't so far listened to another project that I thought was close to House of Balloons.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And maybe part of that is the fact that the lyrical content gets a bit, you know, monotone. And I think Lorde is playing with that problem, and so because she's decided to go for the same kind of ideas, I feel like she needed more flowery or just interesting metaphors.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of the metaphors on this album are really not that deep in a
Mhm.
sense. Like, you know, those rumors they have big teeth, hope they bite you.
Mhm.
And, you know, I could list out, I really don't like that Jack and Jill get fucked up and possessive. I don't like the way she's done that kind of edgy retelling of Jack and Jill, you know.
Okay.
There's quite a few lines. I mean, there's a couple lines that I do really like, but overall, it's like there isn't enough in the lyrical kind of the figurative, metaphorical realm of the lyrics that's really like pulling me in at all, you know. So that's overall, I feel like that's a problem for me.
And I agree with you to a certain extent. The green light lyrics that you highlighted, I certainly had a problem with, but I have bigger problems with that song in general. The Jack and Jill one, I didn't mind so much, but I can totally see how it would rub you the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the fact that she's writing about the same things, that is a legitimate criticism. The way I see things is, like, I've listened to Pure Heroin a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I used to listen to it a lot a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you compare the two albums, I feel like the negatives of discussing the same content are somewhat lessened. They still exist, but they're somewhat lessened by the fact that this album, I feel, feels more narratively focused than Pure Heroin does. Like, Pure Heroin jumps all over the place in terms of tone and narrative. Like, this feels a lot more focused in terms of a kind of vision that it wants to paint in terms of an album, whereas Pure Heroin feels more like a compilation. So this doesn't nullify the problem of her writing about the same things, and if she continues to do so, she will end up in the same situation that The Weeknd has, in that it just becomes tired. But I do feel like what I have said lessens that somewhat.
Okay, I will give you that it's more thematic and it has more of a conscious album flow than Pure Heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that. But the problem with this album, in terms of the narrative that's going through this album, is, again, this is going to sound harsh, but try to think of this as not harsh as possible.
Okay.
It's basically about her life. Like, when I was reading about it, it sounds like she was describing, like, the last couple years in her life, or, like, you know, what things have been like. And it's like, you know, if you're talking about your life, I'm not invested in her to care about her life, in a sense. So, like, fair enough, if you want to talk about your life, obviously, that's fine. That's probably the thing you know best. That's probably, you know, The Weeknd, you know, I'm sure he was talking about his life when he talks about everything he talks about. But the thing is, you have to dress it up in things that kind of transcend you just kind of, you know, it's not a diary in the end of the day. You have to deliver it or package it, wrap it up in, you know, like I was saying, maybe more creative, more exciting metaphors, maybe reeling in the experience and putting it into more kind of conceptual ideas, rather than staying heavy in her kind of perspective. I just think things like this could have made it more accessible to someone like me, who was going into the album like, I'm not a Lorde fan. Like, she's got some good songs. I don't dislike her, but I'm not a fan. I'm not invested. It's not like I need to know what Lorde's been up to for the last couple of years, right? Yeah. So, you know, my problem with the narrative in general is just that it's very personal, and for how personal it is, it's kind of, I feel like it's almost kind of alienating for someone who isn't already deeply invested in her.
Yeah, this is totally going to appeal to people who are slightly younger than us. You know, people living through their teenage years or whatever. This is going to speak to a lot of what they're going through or whatever. But speaking as like 20 plus something men, we've kind of been there. We kind of just seen how like not important that whole thing is.
Right.
And what you've said is definitely somewhere that I hope that she goes in the future, if she wants to continue talking about this kind of thing. Like, you could totally dress up. Like, there are elements of it on this album, but it's not pushed far enough.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree there are elements, like in Again, I have to come back to Sober 2. There's some really cool lyric. It's almost Shakespearean about how they kiss and kill each other. Yeah, stuff like that. You know, it's very like, that's the melodrama done right. And I think in other places, it's kind of melodrama done wrong. And I always say this. I say this about every album. Just because you make something a theme and then play to that theme, that doesn't make it good.
You don't get it, man. It's bad on purpose.
Take the concept melodrama. That is not a linear concept. It can be, the concept of melodrama can be delivered in 1,000 different ways, right? So you can do melodrama good and you can do melodrama bad. The difference between melodrama that's almost melodrama that's self-aware and melodrama that doesn't feel as self-aware. It's kind of hard to pick out lowlights because it's not that there was songs that burst out to me as lowlights. Did you have songs that burst out to you as lowlights? Because really, most of my problems are quite general.
Yeah, so there are tracks on this album where, like, I feel like Lorde has a certain footprint. Like, you can tell it's a Lorde track. Whether, you know, how deep that footprint is remains to be seen. But I feel like there are tracks on this album, Greenlight in particular, where that footprint is just gone, and it just feels like anyone could have written this song.
Okay.
So, I think my main problem with Greenlight is the instrumental, man. It is just so bland. I don't remember a single thing from it. Like, in terms of what this album tries to talk about, I don't feel like it starts the album well. Like, she's talking about waiting for this green light to finally get over her ex or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like that should come later. Like, we need the investment to want you to get away from whatever destructive relationship you had.
Okay. I get what you mean. Yep.
So it just felt a bit vapid in terms of a single release, and I feel like it works even less on this.
Okay,
album.
yeah. There's a line in Perfect Places, and it says, "Let's kiss and then take off our clothes." And she describes this, like, Lorde has, like, annotated the genius herself, or she's kind of done an interview and they've kind of represented that as a verified annotation. Right. And she's described this as, like, this profound line in the context of the song. And it's like, I just don't buy that that's a profound line.
No, it feels very normal.
And she's like, she's saying like, you know, the fact that it's kind of cliche in the midst of all this complexity, I felt was very profound. And I was like, start off all this complexity, like, not really. And also, even if I granted that everything else around it was really deep and this was just it still doesn't make it profound, you know? It's just, it's not even like, you know, when people say really, like, sharp general truths that become, like, you know, viral posters and shit.
That become minion memes.
Right, exactly, yeah. It hasn't even got the power of something like that. It's literally, let's kiss and then take off our clothes.
Yeah. Like, well, I actually find it rather interesting that you're paying so much attention to the genius annotations and the context behind it. It's not like you. It's not like a bad comment I'm swaying towards you. It's just interesting.
I think it's just because when you go onto Melodrama, there's like verified annotations all over the place. Right. And I can kind of, again, I don't want to get armchair psychology, but I can almost kind of feel the youth insecurity where she feels like she has to describe everything she did just to assure us that it was good and it was thoughtful and stuff. And it's like,
there are definitely elements about this album where you were talking about Loveless as well, where you feel like, you know, if Lovless Generation is meant to be a kind of parody or whatever, it works better. I feel like there are bits on this album, the line that you've mentioned as well about taking, you know, kissing and then taking clothes off, that would work better or wouldn't be as much of a problem if Lorde on the genius annotations or whatever wasn't building them up to be something that they're not.
Right, yeah. Yeah, if she just left this, I would have kind of taken it for what it is, but because she started talking about complexity, I'm here like looking for it, and then I'm like, I don't know, man. It's not that deep. Like that is, and I'd say the same, you know, because some people, you know, you can see like the comments on the Genius, and people are like, man, this is such a great line, and I don't know, the lines just don't hit me like that. Like they really don't feel that deep.
There's too much pretense about it in the description.
They just don't do much for me personally.
Fair enough.
I do think Liabilities are low light, and The reason why it's a low light, part of the reason why it's a low light, a big reason, is again more of a general problem, and it's this weird kind of semi-rap, semi-singy, kind of edgy delivery that she does in various points in this album, but I think it's most poignant on Liability. And I really don't like this delivery that she keeps coming back to. There's a moment in Homemade Dynamite when she does it. There's a moment in even the way she says, what's that line that you really like in the Louvre?
Broadcast the boom, boom, boom and make them all dance to it.
Right. Even that broadcast the boom, boom, boom line, again, it's I don't like that delivery. Thankfully, in that song, it was brief, right? Mm-hmm. But in Liability, it's basically the whole of the verses. And yeah, I think I much prefer it when she sings. Like, I think she should use her voice in more of a singy way and to show off, because she has a good voice. So, you know,
one of my problems with Liability was the lack, not the lack, but again, this kind of half measure of emotion that you get. So there's some really nice lyrics here. Like, especially in the first verse, where she talks about going home to the girl that she loves. It ends up being her, and, she's dancing by herself or whatever. I like that imagery. But maybe it's because of the style of singing that you were highlighting. But I felt like I wasn't totally invested. It's like, I want to be invested in this, but you're giving me so little reason to be. Like, the song instrumentally is generic as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Liability, like, if it wasn't for some stronger bits of songwriting, then it definitely would be a low light. But I feel like that kind of saved it. It was on the cusp.
So yeah, in terms of overall thoughts, I think this is worse than Pure Heroine. I think Pure Heroine had better lyricism. I thought it was more consistent. The vocal melodies were more memorable, and I've listened to Pure Heroine less, and the songs have stuck with me a lot more than the songs on this. So yeah, I don't really feel this as a step up. I grant that it's more thematic and that it's more kind of conceptually tight, but I'd rather listen to Pure Heroine any day, really. And for the reasons I've said and my problems with it, I would say it's a kind of high 5 for me. It's just not doing it for me, really. I feel like if I wanted to listen to a super pop sound that is being kind of pushed artistically, I'd listen to an album like Art Angels, because I think it goes sonically, not in terms of the lyrics, but sonically, it gets that idea of kind of cheesy dance pop and expanding it into something else. It gets that idea and it does it more justice. Yeah, highlights are Hard Feelings, Loveless, Sober 2, and The Louvre. And low lights would be Green Light and Liability, and everything else is just kind of to me.
It's interesting that you don't view it as a step up, because I do. Albeit, like, maybe a tiptoe of a step up. Because there are, like, she does a lot of things better on this album than I feel like she does on Pure Heroine, but she also introduces so many new problems that, it's kind of hard to say this is a massive or a clear step up from Pure Heroine. And so let me preface this by saying, like, I do enjoy the album, but I am critical of Lorde because I feel like there is potential here.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like she has a lot of potential.
But she's not doing it, man.
Yeah, she's just not there yet.
It's very frustrating.
I don't want to sound patronising, because in the end of the day, she's done more than I've ever done in my life, and she's still very creative and talented, but in my opinion, it just feels like she's just not there yet in her career. I feel like maybe in a couple albums' time she'll be really hitting gold, but for now, this still feels like baby steps to potentially something better for me anyway.
I have the same problem with Lady Gaga, but even more so. Like, I felt like there was potential when she first dropped, and she's just given me, like... She's given me so many reasons to, like, go, yes, you've improved, and then, no, you haven't. Like, you've just fucked it. Like, I feel like Lorde is definitely more capable than Gaga, though. So, I'd agree with that. Yeah. I'm personally going to give the album a middling 6.
Okay.
Pure Heroine is also a middling 6 for me.
Right. So they're around the same.
Yeah.
See, for me, Pure Heroine was kind of on the border of a 6 and a 7. Like, I've only listened to it twice, so more time to kind of decide where it falls. But I think Pure Heroine... I think Team is probably still her best song, and that's on Pure Heroin.
Highlights include Sober, The Love, Perfect Places, and super highlight being Writer in the Dark. I want to give a shout out to Homemade Dynamite. That was on the cusp of being a highlight. Just check it out. See what you think. Lowlights, Green Light, and, Liability is on the cusp of being one. But the problems on this album are generally more album-wide than specific songs.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you guys have listened to Melodrama, what do you guys think of it? Do you like it a lot more than us? Do you like it even less than us? Please let us know in the comments. Check out the other album reviews that we've done. Stay tuned for the future of Sunday Jamz. New content will be coming soon. And until then, please like, please subscribe, and please share. Goodbye.